everyone. Welcome to the finale, the season finale review on the Grid Podcast, Season 3, Episode 41. I'm your host, Adrian, as per, joined by my fantastic right-hand man, Ethan Evans, and the co-host of this podcast. Ethan, are we getting a bit emotional?
Absolutely. It's been a long season, ups and downs, and more downs than ups, I'd say. But we're coming to the end, and we've got now 3 months to wait until we're back in F1. So it's a little bit, it's a strange feeling, isn't it?
I mean, we've got all the post-season testing malarkey in the background as it happens, but I don't think people are putting their focus on that as much as the F1 world thinks. At the time of recording, it's a Tuesday evening, so it's exactly 92 days, I think, until we are back. I think it was 94 days when they said it in commentary. So take that, 92 days. But yeah, as you guys may have known, this is going to be the season finale review. We'll be looking at the ins and outs of Abu Dhabi, specifically Max Verstappen winning yet another victory, recording yet another record, and just completely smashing and wiping the floor with his competition. But let's begin with qualifying before we get into the race and do our driver ratings. In Q1, we saw a very, very shock elimination of the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz with Kevin Magnussen, Valtteri Bottas, Zhou Guanyu, and Logan Sargent in P20. Let's begin with Logan Sargent because I think he's probably going to be the biggest talking point between now and until the new season starts regarding Oliver Williams malarkey. But talking about Abu Dhabi, is it a little bit disappointing to see him unable to get out of Q1? I think Williams have had frustrations with Alex Albon obviously out qualifying him. I think he's out qualified him throughout the whole season. No, I think Logan out qualified him once. But what is it, twice? Or is he not even out qualified him? Really?
Logan Sargent is the first man to be whitewashed in qualifying by a teammate since Alex Albon against Max Verstappen.
I thought that Logan out qualified him in one of the races. I'm trying to think what race it was. Went very well.
No, it might have been a sprint qualifying.
Oh, okay. We're not classing a sprint qualifying. It's just pure qualifying.
Actually,
okay.
no. It is 27-0 across all qualifying formats.
Well then, I stand corrected. He's been whitewashed. Ethan, just put into words what Logan Sargent might be thinking after scoring a fantastic record of nil points to 27 in Alex Albon's favour in the qualifying head-to-head at Williams.
Well, yeah, like I said, first time a guy's been whitewashed by their teammate in qualifying since Alex Albon in that 2020 season against Max Verstappen. It's a bit ironic that he's now the one doing it to his teammate. But then again, you can't really criticize him for that because you think of some of the performances that Alex Albon has put on in qualifying, but to not qualify, to beat him once in qualifying is shocking. But I don't know how much that's going to affect his seat really, because no one thought that's the expectation. I think, he has had some great qualifying sessions as well. You think back to last weekend to Vegas where he put it in P7. So you can look at it both ways, but I don't know if this statistic is going to be the be all and end all for Logan Sargent regarding a seat for next season.
Moving on to the shock of the session, Carlos Sainz. We obviously saw in free practice that collision that he had. And I truly believe that last weekend put a damper on Carlos Sainz ahead of this weekend. I think confidence was probably a little bit low. And heading into Abu Dhabi, I think that Carlos Sainz had already already gave up at this point. And I don't want to say he didn't put the effort in, because every single F1 driver strives to put the effort in. But I just think he'd necessarily not tried his best. I think obviously qualifying 16th with your teammate up in second isn't amazing. But then again, everybody falls foul of poor qualifying at times. And it does happen. But Ethan, Carlos Sainz, the topic of at Ferrari. I've kind of had a bit of stat digging where you've been able to shine the light on qualifying. I've had a stat digging on the total damage costs, and Carlos Sainz is P2 in those standings, only behind Logan Sargent. I believe Logan Sargent's figures are over $4 million worth of in damages, and Carlos Sainz is $3.5 million worth in damages. Do you think the damages cost him dearly, especially ahead of qualifying in Abu Dhabi from free practice phase?
Yeah, quite possibly, because obviously he didn't get much running in FP1. FP2 he crashed very early on, and you've got to say, ultimately, that's what cost Ferrari P2 in the constructors, not Mercedes being quicker this weekend or whatever. It was the fact that Carlos Sainz wasn't in that fight. You know, you look at Lewis Hamilton had another off day in Abu Dhabi. He wasn't at the races at all. He's had a bit of a poor form to end the season after a very good campaign, Hamilton. So Sainz not being in that fight is what has cost Ferrari P2 in the constructors, despite the fact he is the one who's the only driver that's got a win other than Red Bull. This performance cost Ferrari everything, and himself. It cost himself P4 in the Drivers' Championship, and he ended up 7th behind his teammate as well. So, yeah, very disappointed, I'm sure Carlos Sainz will be going into the off season, but you know, there's no reason why next season he can't come back at it, because he's been beating Leclerc for most of the season. If that Ferrari is anywhere, then he could pick up some more race wins or definitely some podiums in the next year, hopefully.
Looking into Q2, the top three. I didn't mention Q1's top three, so the Q1 top three was all kind of Red Bull themed, with Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez 1-2, and Yuki Tsunoda in P3, an impressive P3 for Yuki. Like I say, heading into Q2, the top three: Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc. I think the top three was split by about 2/10 in this session, with the bottom five consisting of Lewis Hamilton, once again a shock exit in Q2, Esteban Ocon, Lance Stroll, Alex Albon, and Daniel Ricciardo. Esteban Ocon, usually a consistent qualifier, wasn't able to replicate it here in Abu Dhabi. Lance Stroll, a little bit worse, a little bit of a worse track for him after so many good qualifying sessions in the last couple of races. Alex Albon, as well, I think his Williams car didn't have enough to get into Q3, and then Daniel Ricciardo out-qualified by his teammate Yuki Tsunoda. A shock, may be. But the big hitter here, Lewis Hamilton, 11th out of Q2 for out of the top 10 for the second race in a row, I believe. Las Vegas, it happened the same. The same happened, but he was able to crawl back and gain some valuable points there. Do you think that Lewis Hamilton's form, Ethan, has kind of dropped off in the latter stages of this calendar year? I mean, we're talking about a 7-time world champion who's finished in P3 in the drivers' standings. Does it really bother him if he qualifies outside the top 10 or not?
Of course it does. Of course it does. You know, he may be a 7-time world champion, but there's still that desire, race by race, to win or to be as high up as he can. I thought his post-race interview was very telling on how downbeat he was. Yeah, he's had he qualified 11th in both Vegas and Abu Dhabi now. And then his his final three races, he finished 8th, 7th, and 9th. That's not replicating the form that he showed at the start of the season, or up to that point, to be fair. Obviously, he had a lot of bad luck last weekend in Las Vegas, but I think it was very telling that, Hamilton is done with this car. He needs that car that is going to be able to deliver him an opportunity to win races, to compete with Verstappen. Because if there's one man on the grid that can just compete with Max Verstappen over a season, it's Lewis Hamilton. Verstappen has operated at a crazy level this week, this season. There's 3 races that he didn't win this season. It's absolutely insane. So there's only one man that can beat him over the course of a season, and he just needs a race-winning car, or a car good enough to compete with Verstappen. And I think that was very telling from the way his form has slumped in these last couple of races.
Is it 2 years now that Lewis Hamilton's gone without a race victory? It's kind of telling of how this Mercedes has reacted and how Lewis Hamilton has reacted over the Mercedes car in the last 2 seasons. It's just not been good enough for him. But into Q3, it was obviously the formidable front two of Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc, with Oscar Piastri returning into the top 3 for the first time since his sprint quali success in Qatar, I want to say. Do you think? Well, let's talk about Oscar Piastri. He's been on a little bit of a downward spiral ever since that Qatar success and that sprint race victory. Do you think heading into the off season, it was kind of a much needed boost for him to be up inside the top 10 and out qualifying his teammate? I know it didn't transpire very well in the race, but qualifying kind of puts you in a good stead for the race. So do you think that Oscar kind of needed a little bit of that bonus, that little added sparkle on the Saturday to kind of show him that there's he's going in the right direction? He's had a very good rookie season, and for him not to put his head down ahead of a new campaign.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he has had a brilliant first campaign in Formula One. Nobody can take that away from him. He's driven at a great level. Where did he finish in the constructors? The Drivers' Championship. I think it was 9th. Only the top 3 teams and his teammate beat him. Everyone's going to talk about the points gap between Norris and Piastri, but if you look at the race by race, their finishing positions, there's not a whole lot of difference. Obviously, Piastri's found a couple of races difficult, such as Brazil and Vegas recently, where after he had got those couple of podiums, his form did slump. But I think, just give him another season, wait and see what he does, because I think he's going to be a hell of a lot closer to Norris next season, and Norris is not going to have it his own way, I tell you that, over the course of next season.
Well, let's talk about Lando Norris. Obviously, George Russell in between in a McLaren sandwich. Okay, let's before we talk about Lando Norris, let's talk about George Russell as well. The Mercedes man, P4, another driver that's, I think, needed that little bit of a confidence boost ahead of the season finishing, and ahead of 2024. Do you think that Russell is able to? Well, we're gonna look into the future now. Do you think we're able to see the George Russell of old, the George Russell of 2022, after this qualifying performance that saw him in P4 and out qualifying his teammate? Do you think this, yet again, like Oscar Piastri, is a much needed confidence boost ahead of a brand new season next year?
Yeah, Russell needed this session. It's almost like a role reversal. You've had Russell's been quite poor this season, and Hamilton has been very, very consistent. And it's almost like this race it flipped, where Russell was done what he needed to do. He got the job done, and it's exactly what Mercedes needed in order to retain second place in the Constructors' Championship. So he's the one that's essentially has dragged Mercedes to P2 despite a pretty poor season, you have to say. So he's done his job perfectly, and he was unlucky not to be a bit further forward, I think, as well.
I said we'd talk about Lando Norris, but I think in retrospect, Lando Norris has done as best job as he possibly could to drag that McLaren team from the depths and to drag them where they are. I don't think we really need to discuss that, man. He did fantastically well to qualify P5. The shock of the session, I think, alongside Nico Hulkenberg, who qualified P8. Yuki Tsunoda, P6. What can you say about Yuki? I mean, a fantastic performance in qualifying for him.
Yeah, great effort from Tsunoda. Just as you thought, his form was slumping. He's come back in those last couple of races, got some good points, and AlphaTauri are very unlucky to end up not beating Williams in the Constructors' Championship. And Yuki has led that charge, really. Obviously, Ricardo had that brilliant performance in Mexico, but Tsunoda, the last few races, has been consistently up there, consistently fighting for points. And, he's showing what the type of form that he started the season with. He started and ended the season in a great nick of form.
And rounding off Q3, inside the top 10, we had Fernando Alonso in P7, the aforementioned Nico Hulkenberg in P8, Sergio Perez, a pole qualifying for him in P9, and Pierre Gasly sneaking into the top 10 in 10th. On to our driver ratings, our final driver ratings of the season. Kickstart in with Max Verstappen, qualified P1, finished P1. I didn't think he was as comfortable as he could have been. Yes, I think he did drive into the distance a little bit in the second stint, but I think in the first stint he was a little bit troubled by the Charles Leclerc, who was trying to make the move but wasn't aggressive enough. And I think by the two McLarens as well. I give him a 9 out of 10. Still think a very, very good performance, but I don't think it's the typical 10 out of 10 performance for Max Verstappen that we've given him in the past. So I've settled with a 9.
I disagree slightly. I have gone for a 10 out of 10. I thought it's been, another very comfortable performance from Verstappen. What more can you say? The guy has got, out of a possible 620 points this season, Verstappen's got 575. It's just unbelievable what that guy has done this season. He's won almost every single race. There are 4 races including sprints, or 5 races including sprints that he hasn't won. It's been a great effort from him. And yeah, 9.5 from me. 9.5 overall from the two of us, but a 10 out of 10 for me because I thought he was on top form.
On to the Ferrari man, Charles Leclerc, who qualified second and finished second. I've gone with the same grade as Verstappen. I've gone with a 9 out of 10. I don't think I can class this as bias, but Charles Leclerc tried his utmost best to keep up with Max Verstappen during the opening stint. But I mean, the Red Bull's just better on the tyres, and Leclerc just slightly faded away. He even fell back to as close as George Russell, but he was able to fend him off. So I've settled with a 9. It's still a fantastic podium, don't get me wrong. But it just leaves, I think, a sour taste in Charles Leclerc's mouth, purely on the basis that he missed out on P4 in the drivers on countback, and Ferrari missed out on the constructors by 3 points. So still a fantastic performance, and probably a very, very deserved 9 out of 10.
Again, yeah, same as you. I've gone for the same grade as I gave for Verstappen, so I've gone for a 10 out of 10 for Charles Leclerc. He's ended the season in a great run of form, you've got to say, particularly in qualifying. His last 5 qualifying performances, first in COTA, first in Mexico, second in Brazil, first in Vegas, second in Abu Dhabi. 3 poles from the last 5 races.
But can I add how many of them are victories?
Yeah, but you're going up against Max Verstappen. As we said, it's 3 races. this season that he hasn't won. Whereas there's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 9 races he hasn't got pole at. So it's not been a dominant qualifying car at Red Bull, and I think that's been tailored more towards looking after the tyres and to race pace than it has been towards qualifying pace, because they know Verstappen has that level to him that he is going to consistently put it thereabouts. So yeah, Leclerc's done his absolute utmost in that last race to try and fight for that P2 in the Drivers' Championship. And to be fair, I think if he had got P4 in the Drivers, I think it would be a little bit misleading, because I don't think this has been a particularly good season from Leclerc. He's had his moments, particularly in his last few races, as we said, but there hasn't been as many standout performances from my point of view. Because up until the last 2 races, I think Sainz was by far the better of the 2 Ferraris over the course of the season. So yeah, it's a great performance from Leclerc, 10 out of 10, but I'm sure we'll dissect his season performance more in a future episode.
On to P3 man George Russell, and I complete the trio in the top 3 with another 9 out of 10. I think George Russell, let's just say he's not had the best of seasons. And I think we can both agree on that one. It's just not the George Russell of 2022 and even the last year at Williams in 2021, where it was called the inaugural Mr. Saturday. And he was just putting on a show. But this season, I don't know whether the spark has faded away or whether he's got a little bit overconfident after beating Lewis Hamilton in 2022. But I think this season in 2023, I think it's been a little bit of a reality check for George Russell. I think he's finally realised that Lewis Hamilton is not a pushover. And in 2024, if Mercedes have a more dominant car, I think the two of them will be pushing each other once again to the absolute limit. But in this race, I think he was faultless. He did very well to qualify P4 and then to finish P3. Not on the road. He finished in P4 on the road, but due to a dirty little Sergio Perez, he finished on the podium once again. So yeah, it's another 9 out of 10 performance. I don't know whether I've graded these a bit harshly or whether I'm missing F1 so much already. My harsh side might have been coming out, but I've gone with a whole top 3 trio, 9s out of 10s, 9s out of 10 for the whole trio, including George Russell.
Yeah, first one we agree on. I've also gone from 9 out of 10 from George Russell. You know, we've spoken about how difficult he's found this season, but you can't fault that last performance. He's the reason that Mercedes have got P2 in the Constructors' Championship, despite arguably if Mercedes missed out, he would have been the reason that they didn't get it, because obviously he's a lot further behind Hamilton over the course of the season and behind both Ferraris in the Drivers' Championship. It would have been a 10 out of 10 if he came second and beat Leclerc, but he just didn't have the pace throughout that race to really put the Ferrari under pressure. And I think he was kind of happy to sit behind as long as Mercedes maintained that P2 in the Constructors.
On to P4 man Sergio Perez, who essentially finished P2 on the road. But due to his 5-second penalty after a collision with Lando Norris a few laps before, got himself a P4 instead and didn't make it on the podium. Regardless of that, he made up 5 places, which I think is the most. It's the most places gained in Abu Dhabi, and I think he made the most overtakes in that race as well. But I've gone with a 7. I think qualifying performances wise, it's that bog standard Sergio Perez on the brink of the top 10. And then in the race, he made some great moves down into the left and right hander. But that collision with Norris just put my rating down. And then also I know the FIA can be pain sometimes. Um, but to call him a joke on the radio and then get himself, I think, a warning, it's uncalled for. I know it's the heat of the moment and adrenaline kicks in, etc. Um, but those things can happen, and I think he's fallen foul of that. I've given him a 7 out of 10. I don't think it was a brilliant performance, and I think that collision with Lando Norris kind of just put a damper on a good performance. But a 7 out of 10, and I think Sergio Perez can finish the season with his head held high. I think it's been an all right season. He's finished P2, but it's over. And Max Verstappen's finished over double the amount of points that he finished on. So make of that what you will. But I've given Sergio Perez a 7 out of 10 for his Abu Dhabi performance.
Yeah, the fact that Max Verstappen could have won the Constructors' Championship by himself is a crazy stat. It's such a scary stat as well. Just to say the level at which he's operated this season. I agree with you. I've gone for a 7 out of 10. It would have been higher had he not had that collision and cost himself a podium. Which, well, I'm quite glad because he actually cost himself he cost the points that they would have lost Mercedes because he didn't. I don't think he would have overtaken Leclerc on track because obviously Leclerc gave him second place to try and get that 5 second gap to Russell. So I think you would have seen Leclerc second, Perez third, Russell fourth, which would have been enough for Ferrari to claim the P2 in the constructors, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, 7 out of 10. You got to say that Sergio Perez has ended the season in a good vein of form, and he's proven to everybody that he does deserve that seat, and he's relieved a bit of the pressure off. I think after a lot of pressure was building on him for some very subpar results.
T5, Lando Norris, I've settled with an 8 out of 10. I think it was a good performance to finish to end the season with. I mean, his younger and less experienced teammate did finish behind him, started ahead of him. And I think, yeah, overall, I think McLaren have done very well, especially Lando Norris. I mean, I think he's only Max Verstappen has gained more points than he has since the summer break. So, round of applause for Lando Norris. But his Abu Dhabi performance goes down as an 8 out of 10.
I don't agree. I'd say 7 out of 10 because I thought, to be fair, he had a very anonymous weekend, Lando, and I didn't think he'd done anything particularly special, which is why I've actually graded him and his teammate as the same. But we'll get on to that. So yeah, it's 7 out of 10 from me for Norris.
And if that means you gave Oscar Piastri a 7 out of 10, I've agreed with you on that one because I think his qualifying performance was fantastic. But he just simply did not have the pace that Lando Norris did. And on that first stint, he faded away, got overtaken by Lando, and then tried to claw it back, but just couldn't. So I settled with a 7 out of 10 for Oscar Piastri.
Yeah, as I've already said, 7 out of 10 for Piastri. I can't give one higher than the other personally. So I think Piastri had the better qualifying pace, got it into third place, which was a remarkable performance. Beat Norris as well, which hasn't happened too often this season in qualifying. And then just didn't have that same level of race pace, but didn't finish too far behind Norris either. So they're very finely matched. And I think, one gets the edge in qualifying, one gets the edge in the race. So they balance out both for a 7 out of 10 for me. But I'm sure the main thing for them is that they claimed fourth in the constructors. Norris almost got into P4, which would have been an unbelievable comeback from where they were at the start of the season to finish fourth, but he ended up finishing sixth behind Leclerc and Alonso. Yeah, as I said, back to Piastri, almost 100 points in his debut season. You can't knock him for that unbelievable performance.
On to Fernando Alonso, who qualified 7th and finished 7th. I've got him down for a 6.5. I think that he had a decent. I don't think his opening stint was brilliant. I think his second stint was a lot better. He was fighting Hamilton, and then got past Hamilton, got past Tsunoda, and I think he was closing in on the two McLarens at the end of a race. Um, but yeah, to close out a season, to close out such a fantastic season, finishing P4 for Aston Martin, I mean, very good, right? And to beat out Charles Leclerc on countback to claim that P4, I think is a lot sweeter, a much sweeter reward for Fernando Alonso for the season that he's had. Let's not forget he is a rookie, and yeah, that was by the way a sarcastic comment. Before everybody slates me, no, he's almost 50. He's getting into the olden age. Um, but no, for such a fantastic driver, for a two-time world champion to put Aston Martin on his back, and to claim some more valuable points. I know it wasn't enough for Aston Martin to be anywhere near finishing ahead of McLaren, but back to his Abu Dhabi performance, I don't think it was too bad. I just think the race pace was not there, and I think it's been lacking for the last couple of races for Aston Martin. So I settle with a 6.5 out of 10 for Fernando Alonso.
I've gone for an 8 out of 10. I thought it was a very good way to close out the season, personally, for Fernando. He's had his rocky patch throughout the season, but to claim P4 in the Drivers' Championship, when Aston Martin finished fifth in the constructors, is an unbelievable achievement. He's beaten both Ferraris, he's beaten Norris, he's beat Russell, all when over the course of the season you've got to say they've had a quicker car, and that unbelievable form at the start of the season from Alonso, all of those podiums really came back to aid him. And that is the reason why he's actually finished above Leclerc, because he's got 8 podiums to Leclerc's 6. And I've got to give Alonso an 8 out of 10 because of that overtake on Tsunoda on the penultimate lap, which actually got him that the points necessary to give him P4 in the Drivers' Championship. Because without that, he would have been 6th with those 2 less points, and he wouldn't have. He would have been behind Leclerc and Norris. But it was a great performance. Good way to close out the season, but hopefully for Fernando's sake, that Aston Martin is improving a lot next season.
On to P8 man, the man who Fernando Alonso overtook on the penultimate lap, Yuki Tsunoda. I've gone with an 8 for Yuki Tsunoda, and you may call me crazy, but for AlphaTauri, I mean Yuki Tsunoda had to fight. Really fight for AlphaTauri to try and get them into P7 in the Constructors' Championship. I want to say that they missed out by 3 or so points in the Constructors to Williams in P7. I might be wrong. I'm just checking on the go. Just 3 points, and the same gap as a Ferrari and Mercedes. 3 points. I mean, if he qualified and finished in P6, what's that? 25, 18, 15, 12, 10, 8, 6 points to the 4 points. So it still would have not been enough. I think he would have needed a fastest lap to even have imagined getting P7 in the Constructors' Championship. But I think Yuki Tsunoda, he's had a bit of an up and down season, don't get me wrong. But I think this performance in Abu Dhabi was a much needed one. And hopefully what will be the now changed AlphaTauri team, it won't be called AlphaTauri anymore, something else in 2024, is on the up. And hopefully they are bringing a quicker car than the one that they did in the 2023 season. So a much improved performance for Yuki Tsunoda and an 8 out of 10 from me.
I don't think you're crazy at all. I think you're actually maybe crazy for not giving him a higher grade. I've given him a 9 out of 10. Career best qualifying in the final race, put it in P6, and then he had a great race, lost out position at the end. But then what we're forgetting as well is that he got overtaken by Hamilton into that second DRS zone on the final lap. But Hamilton made a slight mistake. Nola pounced on it and he got that position back. He got P8 back. So yeah, if he hadn't got overtaken by Alonso, that would have been 2 extra points. But Ricciardo finished 11th, very close behind Stroll. So that would have been almost another point, which would have meant that Williams and AlphaTauri would have been tied on points. I'm not sure who would have won on countback, if to be honest. But yeah, almost happened there for them. But yeah, like I said, great performance from Tsunoda. Rounded off the season, as we said, in a great run of form, similarly to how he started it. But the difference is now he is actually bringing in some points. He's brought in a good amount of points over these last sort of 3 or 4 races. And this is a sort of development we need. He's in his 3rd season. He's going into his 4th. He needs to start showing his class and that he is, a future potential race winner and able to get podiums and put in these types of performances for his sake, for the sake of his own career, because it's not good enough to just be sat on the grid, hoping to, finish P8, P9 every race. He'll be wanting to get race victories.
On to P9 man Lewis Hamilton, a very, very subpar performance in Abu Dhabi. Not a stellar Lewis Hamilton performance. That's why I've got him down as a 6. And purely on the basis of not making Q3 for a second race in a row. That's already a dampener on the spirits. I mean, he did have a nice little battle with Fernando Alonso and Yuki Tsunoda. He got himself into the points, secured 2 points, which obviously benefited Mercedes a lot in the overall Constructors' Championship standings. But in terms of being anywhere around his teammate at Abu Dhabi in the race, he was nowhere near the level of George Russell in Abu Dhabi. And I'm probably speaking facts, but Lewis Hamilton has had so many fantastic performances this season. This one was just subpar, and it just wasn't the Lewis Hamilton that we've seen throughout the whole of this season. So in Abu Dhabi, for me, Lewis Hamilton, a 6 out of 10.
Yeah, completely agree. It wasn't the performance that he needed, although he did do enough to give Mercedes that edge in the fight for P2. But I just want, where was his race pace? He finished P9, he started 11th. It's not as if he started last and made up a bunch of positions. He overtook 2 cars. That was it. He had no pace to fight Alonso or Tsunoda, and couldn't even dream of getting up to fight the McLarens. It was a very strange one. Arguably his worst performance of the season, to be fair, and the last few races have not been good for Lewis Hamilton. But yeah, that wasn't not a good performance at all.
A rating? I don't think he gave a rating.
I did. I agree with you. 6 out of 10.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. On to the final points finisher, Lance Stroll. Lance picked up his form at the back end of the season. Obviously had them good finishes back to back. And then to finish the season with the points finish is another good performance. I give him a 7 out of 10. Starting outside the points, and then to make it into other points is probably as good as it could have been for Lance Stroll. I mean, we've criticised Lance Stroll very heavily throughout the whole season, and I think in comparison in the last 3 races, he's done fantastically well. He's finished the season on a very good point, and he'll take it whether he retires ahead of next season or whether he retires after next season. It's yet to be known. But he'll take a bit of confidence from this point heading into the new season. So a 7 out of 10.
I've disagreed slightly. I've gone for a 6 out of 10. He's only picked up a point. It is a better performance. He has ended the season in a good run of form. When you think about those 2 fifth place finishes, but I think he should be qualifying better. I don't think he should be getting knocked out in Q2. He's only actually made Q3 on 8 occasions this season. For contrast, there's only been 2 races that Alonso hasn't made Q3. So that's what's knocked him down slightly for me. And And you've got to say, if he had been performing throughout the entire season to this level, then there would be no conversation. Aston Martin would have had a fourth place in the constructors wrapped up long ago. When you consider he finished a whopping 132 points behind his teammate. 23 points behind Oscar Piastri as well, the second McLaren driver. So that it's the performances at the start of the season that has really let down Aston Martin this season from Lance Stroll. You think about some of those shocking performances like at Monaco. Those sorts of performances have really let down Aston Martin this season. It's what's cost them in the championship. But from Abu Dhabi, it's a decent result for Stroll. Not quite reaching the heights that he did in the previous two races, which is why it's only a 6 from me. But it's better nonetheless.
And I've gone for a 6 for the next finisher, which was Daniel Ricciardo. Started 15th, finished 11th. Made up 4 places, the second most throughout the whole race. I think it's a good finish. It's a good end to the season. But I just thought it was a bit average. Looking at Yuki Tsunoda and what he did for AlphaTauri and Abu Dhabi, I think the race for Daniel Ricciardo was slightly average. I mean, he didn't finish too far away from Lance Stroll, and I think it's a good end to the season for Daniel Ricciardo, especially knowing that he kind of came in mid-season, had that injury, and then came back, and then he's had the last couple of races to bed himself back into the team. So next season, he'll most definitely relish in the opportunity that he gets. And here's to hoping for better things for Daniel Ricciardo. And maybe we see a little Red Bull comeback for DR. But for me, for his Abu Dhabi performance, it's a 6 out of 10.
I completely disagree, to be fair. I've given him an 8 out of 10. Because I think what you're forgetting is that he pit on like lap 5 or 6. He had that tear off stuck in his brake duct, which threw the strategy completely out the window, made him pit very early and still made the 2-stopper work. Got right back in there, was fighting for points, and I will just double check, but I think he was only a few seconds behind Lance Stroll. He finished 0.6 seconds behind Lance Stroll for that final points position. When you consider he started lower down and he had that issue with the tear off, which could have ended his race if AlphaTauri hadn't acted sooner. But yeah, like you said, I'm hoping that this is a stepping stone for better things for Ricciardo. He's had these last 5 races to get to grips with that AlphaTauri after missing a few races. But yeah, he's hoping that he can really kick on next season, show his class, which he has done already since coming back, like in Mexico, but really cement himself as the number 1 in that team and look to put pressure on Perez for that number 2 Red Bull seat.
Onto the 2 Alpines. I've graded them the same. I've gone both with an average 5 out of 10. I really don't know what happened to Gasly. I mean, he started inside the top 10 and then just kind of faded away. And same with Esteban Ocon. He's usually a consistent qualifier, near enough the top 10. But I just don't think he really had the pace. I mean, he was challenging very fairly on, and then it just went down. So both Alpine drivers get a 5 out of 10 from me.
I've got to disagree slightly there. I've given Esteban Ocon a 5 out of 10 and Pierre Gasly a 6 out of 10. Despite being beaten by his teammate, I thought Gasly was the lead Alpine in Sunday's race, and he was very unfortunate because he actually got told he got screwed over by a strategy slightly with Alpine clearly favouring Ocon. A lot of people thought he would go into that team and struggle and thought he'd be the flop this season, but he's actually gone into the team, beaten Esteban Ocon, who is a very, very good driver. And, you know, he's put in some great performances, got that podium earlier in the season, but I thought he had a very good season. And, you know, Ghazi had a decent race, I thought. He was just very unlucky with the way in which the strategy worked out and how he wasn't handed any favours by his team. So that's why I've gone for a 5 out of 10 for Ocon and a 6 for...
On to Alex Albon. Not the performance that he was hoping to finish the season off. I'm saying this with a heavy heart, but I'm giving him a 4 out of 10. I think that throughout this season, you look at all of Alex Albon's performances, and you can name a handful of races where he's just been wow, absolutely brilliant. But I just don't think the Williams was suited for Abu Dhabi, and Alex Albon kind of suffered that fate where he just kind of had to do what he could. So I've settled with a 4 out of 10 for Alex.
Yeah, not much higher from me. It's a 4. It's a 5 from me. Disappointing way to end the season after what's been a fantastic year for Alex Albon. I think out of everybody this season, his stock has probably grown the most with those performances that he was putting in that Williams. He's done a fantastic job. It's just a shame that these last 3 races, this is how his season has ended after what's been a fantastic campaign for him. It's a great season overall, but not a race to remember for Albon.
On to P15 man Nico Hulkenberg. Can I just say what a fantastic qualifying from Nico Hulkenberg to put it into P8. But as we know, the race pace of a Haas, it falls like an absolute truck, and he just fell foul of that fate. I give him a 4 out of 10. I think his qualifying performance was fantastic, but in the race, Haas have a lot of catching up to do ahead of 2024 to be anywhere near with a shout of progressing over Constructors' Championship. So yeah, 4 out of 10 for Nico Hulkenberg.
I think there's a couple here we've disagreed on quite a bit. I gave Nico Hulkenberg a 7 out of 10 because, he's qualified in 8th. He's qualified above a Mercedes. He's outqualified an Aston Martin. He's done a fantastic job. He's outqualified both Alpines, which are quicker cars than the Haas. He's put it in a position where it shouldn't be, and then the absolute dog that is the Haas, he's dropped like a brick, and he's just sunk down the order, car after car passing him, and he's ended up finishing 15th. But the fact he has put it into 8th, not just qualifying into Q3, he's outqualified another couple of cars as well, which he has no right to outqualify. It's a fantastic job. He outqualified a Red Bull as well. I think he's still got more Q3 appearances than Sergio Perez this season. And I think he's had a very, very underrated season, Hulkenberg. And if Haas get their act together and they give this man a car which can actually compete in the races, he will do wonders next season. Mark my words. But it's all dependent on that Haas. It was the worst car of the year. And, I'm sure he will not be upset to see the back of that car.
Qualifying merchant, question mark?
Well, you could say that about the Haas because, the Haas just destroys its tyres after a lap. So that's why it's suited to qualifying.
1 lap pace is king for Haas. But unfortunately, race pace isn't, and that's where the progress was hampered. On to Logan Sargent, qualified P20, finished in P16. I mean, made up 4 places, but one of them was a retired Carlos Sainz. One was dropping like a stone Kevin Magnussen, who's, the Haas is absolutely awful. And then the 2 Alfa Romeos who didn't have fantastic races at all. I mean, I don't know what to give him. I don't think I can give him the same grade as Nico Hulkenberg, especially after his qualifying. By the way, I think I might bump Nico Hulkenberg's grade to a 5 out of 10 just because of that qualifying. I think I did him a bit of unfair justice. So I'll give Logan Sargent a 4 and give Nico Hulkenberg a 5.
Yeah, maybe I've just been a bit nicer than you in these ratings. I gave Logan Sargent a 5. Rookie season to the end, it hasn't probably been the season he was expecting or hoping for. and it's a very average performance to end things. He's had his highs, he's had his lows, but overall, I think he would be fortunate to retain his seat. I think if Williams come back and say no, we're not going to keep you on next season, he can have no complaints. But then again, maybe they'll give him another chance just because of the progress he's shown over the season. He got that points finish. But from this weekend, not a great performance. He wasn't far behind Albon though, which is why it's a 5 out of 10 from me.
On to the two Alfa Romeos in 17th and 18th. Zhou Guanyu in 17th, Valtteri Bottas in 18th. Both of them get a 3 out of 10. Really, really poor way to end the season off. I know you give me the eyes, and you're probably shocked at why I'm saying this, but I generally do feel that if that Alfa Romeo has not got a new gearbox, it's an absolute truck. I'm gonna say it again. It's a season finale review. I think I've got to say it. New gearbox equals revitalized Alfa Romeo, and this race, I don't think it was particularly one of their best.
Absolutely not. I've been slightly nice, so I'm starting to see a pattern. Maybe you're just a bit salty that Ferrari missed out on P2 in the constructors. But
no, I don't. I'm gonna butt in for 2 seconds. I don't think I'm quite salty. I just think we've sometimes we've been very inconsistent with driver ratings, and I think I'm just gonna balance it out a little bit here. It's a little bit of a balancing act for me.
Okay, that's the excuse, is it? Yeah, but maybe just a little bit grumpy that Ferrari didn't pick up P2 in the constructors. But yeah, I've been a bit nice. So I gave Zhou a 4 and Bottas a 5. I think Bottas, again, despite finishing behind his teammate, had quicker pace and was done over by a worse strategy. So that's why I've given those grades out. But yeah, again, like you said, awful from Alfa Romeo. They really need to get their act together for next season. Otherwise, it's going to be a long season for them next year. But yeah, not much to write home about, unfortunately for them. But yeah, it's another 2 poor performances.
Similar to Kevin Magnussen, who also didn't have the best of performances. I believe he was only one of 2 lapped cars. I think Bottas got lapped and Magnussen got lapped. And Magnussen just had a woeful weekend. And I've gone with a 2.5. I don't know whether I'm feeling horrible. I'm just missing the racing again. Okay, I want the racing back, but I just think that I'm not going to say it's the worst performance that he had this season, because I don't think there's been one of those where you're thinking, oh dear, he's had a real stinker. But this one, it's just Haas being Haas, just not having a pace whatsoever and just falling like a brick. So yeah, I'll settle with a 3. I won't go with a 0.5. I'll settle with a 3 out of 10.
Yeah, again, I've been the nicer of the 2. I gave Kevin Magnussen a 4. It's not much better, but yeah, it's a poor performance from K-Mag. And I do think that, Haas are looking towards Ollie Behrman for that 2025 seat. I don't think he's ready for 2024. I think they'll be chucking him in too soon. He's had a great debut season in F2, and give him another year. And I think he'll be just about ready to make that step up to F1. So maybe that's what they're thinking. Obviously, they've got those Ferrari ties. So it wouldn't be unrealistic to see him jump in. But yeah, that's the only thing I can think of, because Magnussen has been one of the worst performing drivers this season. And yeah, what more can you really say? Not a good performance. And yeah, again, Haas will be very much looking forward to not racing for quite a while.
We would have been on about talking about having no retirees for the first time in a long time in a race. But Carlos Sainz decided to pull the white flag out and to surrender from a race very late on. And he was the only retiree from a race, qualified P16, retired, 2 out of 10. Needless to say, a poor weekend. I think it just started from his crash in Las Vegas. I just don't think his head was there. culminated with a crash in free practice, which added to the woes of qualifying. I mean, he did try to fight back on the hards, but then he ran hard, and just fell like a brick. And then he obviously had to make another pit stop, which would have saw him fall out of points. So he just decided to retire from the race, and that was the end of it. But a very, very poor performance from Carlos Sainz, and not one that he's likely to have in a long time. So it's harder for me to say and give him a 2 out of 10 because he's not usually a driver that has a poor race weekend. But this one, it certainly was.
Yeah. Again, I've not been as harsh as you on Carlos Sainz. I actually thought he showed good pace, and the thing is, Ferrari played their cards. They gambled on there being a safety car, and it just didn't happen. You know, if a safety car comes out and Sainz has a free pit stops, chucks on the softs, and can make up 5 positions, and including overtaking Hamilton, and Ferrari claim P2, everyone's hailing that as a strategic masterclass. Unfortunately for them, the safety car didn't come out, and it meant that Sainz was an absolute sitting duck, had to pit, and then thought better of it going back out on for absolutely no point at all. So retired from the race, and actually that is Carlos Sainz's lowest performance, the lowest grade of the season, as you can say. He got himself in that own position, but I feel like his pace was good enough to warrant a better grade, which is why I gave him that 5 out of 10. But yeah, that's from my point of view.
Like you say, I'm probably just a bit salty about him being unable to get inside the top 10 and help Charles Leclerc in that fight for P2 in the Constructors' Championship. But that rounds off our driver ratings. And it's time for our final ever predictions review from Abu Dhabi. Ethan, I know you got one of them correct. How did you get on in the second one? How did you get on in your star predictions?
Mixed bag from me. So I had Mercedes to secure P2 in the Constructors, which of course they did. And then I had Sainz to secure P4, and he didn't. So 50-50, we'll take those.
Well, I got whopping nil points, as I said, Ferrari to finish in P2, and they didn't. They narrowly missed out, and Albon to get points. Unfortunately, he didn't. On to our qualifying and our race predictions review. Starting off with qualifying, I got a whopping 0. I'll put it up there. A whopping 0. Predicted Carlos Sainz to put it on pole. He didn't. Max Verstappen second, Charles Leclerc third, Lewis Hamilton fourth, and Sergio Perez in fifth. But the actual order was Verstappen, Leclerc, Piastri, Russell, and Lando Norris. So an absolute stinker from me in qualifying.
I had a better performance. I correctly predicted that front row, Verstappen and Leclerc. So 2 good points for me. I also got another 2 drivers right, but in the wrong order. So I had Norris and Russell in 3rd and 5th when they qualified in 5th and 4th. And then I had Hamilton in there instead of Piastri. So I got 4 of the 5 drivers correct, just 2 of them in the wrong order. So I'll take that. I will take that.
Wow. It looks like the predictions are going to go down to the wire, as I got a whopping 3 out of 5 in my race predictions. I got Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc correctly in P1 and P2. I predicted Carlos Sainz in 3rd, but it was George Russell. I predicted correctly Sergio Perez to finish 4th. And I predicted George Russell to finish 5th, but it was Lando Norris. Ethan, what did you predict in the race? I know the Max Verstappen was going to be obvious, but did you get an extra point?
So it's currently 3-3 for this weekend then. So from my qualifying star predictions, from your race predictions. So you've got 3, I've got 3.
Okay, I don't think are we classing star predictions?
Yeah, we'll class them. Okay, but I hate to rain on your parade.
You've won.
But I also got 3 out of 5 on the race.
Oh.
I had Max Verstappen victory, and then I had Perez and Norris correctly in 4th and 5th. The only mistake I made is I had Leclerc 3rd, and he finished 2nd, of course. And then I had then I had Hamilton as the lead Mercedes in 2nd and Leclerc 3rd. When if you swap those 2 around, I get 4 out of 5, and the only mistake I've made is getting the wrong Mercedes. So this was probably my best weekend, and I saved it right for the end. So I'm very happy with my performance. 5 out of 10 from the qualifying predictions, and then I actually got 8 of the drivers correct across the two. So I will happily take the victory on this weekend.
I think Brad, the editor, kind of needs to go back and look through every single race to see our head-to-head, and we might be able to give you kind of a predictions rundown of how we got on and whatnot. Even I might do that if I've got some spare time over the next week or so. But this rounds off our final review of the season, of the 2023 season. I mean, I'll say we'll be back in 3 months, but we'll probably be back next week, talking a load more gibberish about F1 in the off season. It feels a bit of an emotional one, purely on the basis of it's the final one of the season, a review wise, and now it's just leading up to the 2024 season. So, Ethan, your final thoughts on this season? I mean, Max Verstappen dominated it. Were we surprised? Probably not. Mercedes took P2. Ferrari finished a round off a podium on the Constructors' Championship to finish P3. Give us your final take and how you found the season.
I cannot lie. I am glad to see the end of this 2023 season. It has been a very, very long season, filled with Max Verstappen dominance, and it has been an absolute pain at times to watch the races and watch how dominant he has been. From a personal point of view, as a Mercedes fan and a Lewis Hamilton fan, it has been better to see him, refine that form, finish third in the Drivers' Championship, get some podiums, and which could have been victories. I'm looking at sort of Australia, maybe Mexico, which on another day they could have been victories. But all in all, I'm quite happy with this season, especially beating Ferrari to second in the constructors right at the end there. So looking forward to next season already. Hopefully it will be much, much closer at the top of the table, though.
And any final thoughts for our viewers, for our listeners, everybody who's interacted with our content? Final thoughts on this kind of season closure?
Yeah, thank you all for listening. It's been much appreciated, and for interacting with all of our Instagram reels and everything like that. I can't say it's gonna be 3 months until we record another one of these, because we'll probably record one next week. So yeah, until then.
And from me, from the host, from the founder of this podcast, it's been a fantastic season for ourselves. I mean, I don't think we were expecting to bounce back the way we did in this series, in Series 3. I mean, Series 2 with Harvey Todd was a fantastic one, and Season 1 was also a brilliant one. But I think this was arguably one of the best seasons we've put out of On the Grid, and I think it's gone down to the team behind the scenes, Brad the editor, the two lovely ladies, Zoe and Ashley, doing all the graphics behind the scene. It's been a fantastic one. Like I say, like Ethan said, we'll likely be back next week talking more gibberish about Formula One, so you don't have to worry about us doing a 3-month hiatus. You don't have to worry about that one. But this rounds off episode 41 of season 3 of On the Grid Podcast. Thank you, Ethan, for joining me on this season finale review of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Like I say, we'll be back next week talking more F1 gibberish, whatever that will be. Stay tuned. But in the meantime, thank you for listening, and goodbye.